The entire Standard Islamic Narrative is one of the stupidest stories ever told. So this is an interesting comment. He is saying that the entire Standard Islamic Narrative is one of the stupidest story ever told. And what exactly is the stupidest thing? So we read it here. Why on earth would God reveal the entire Quran to an Arab who could not read or write somewhere in the middle of the desert through an angel for about 20 years? Question mark. It really doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make any sense at all. Alright, so this is an interesting question nevertheless, right? Why on earth would God reveal, number one, the entire Quran to an Arab, right, who could not read or write, right? So what's this, how to make sense of that, right? Why would God reveal the entire Quran to an Arab who cannot read or write? So, and then we have the second part, somewhere in the middle of the desert, and then we have 20 years. So let's break down into three components there, right? So, to an Arab who cannot read or write. From another dimension, right? Because from a Muslim perspective, if you are familiar with the discourse among Muslim, right, this question actually is being analyzed as well, right? What would be the wisdom behind the prophet selected to be, the person selected to be the prophet is someone who do not read or could not read or write, right? So from the perspective of seeking the evidence, right, because the product, the Quran itself, the society, the highest of those who master the language and the linguistic of the Arab at that time, can see that the product is so magnificent, right? So you can see a lot in the hadith and the seerah of instances where they immediately recognize this is something out of this mind. This is beyond what is known to be good poem or poetic, etc., right? So this is far beyond. And you are saying this come from someone who cannot read or write, who is not a poet, right? This doesn't make sense. And the only sense that it can make if this is from the divine, that is the only conclusion that makes sense. You are saying that this guy over here that we know for 40 years, he is not able to produce something like this. He is not someone who read or write or recite poem, etc. And suddenly this come out from his mouth. Where is the logic there? Meaning, if you imagine you are living in that and you know this man for 40 years, right? He doesn't show this ability, and suddenly again and again, and then for 23 years, right? That's the product that comes out of his mouth. The only logical conclusion that makes sense is this is from the divine. Surely he get it from somewhere, and it's not any of, no one is taking claim that because such magnificent work, if you are behind this, you would like to make a claim for it, right? And from the linguistic miracles, etc., they recognize that this is beyond what we collectively can actually produce, and that's why in the Quran there's a challenge to produce anything like it. It is from that perspective, right? Meaning that they know they are not being able to do or produce something like that in terms of the linguistic majesty, right? So that's one angle if you want to see what is the purpose or what is the why, meaning because the question is why on earth. Well, one is to show and to diminish any doubt that perhaps this is from the mind of this brilliant guy that can come up with no, you don't have that option of conclusion based on what they know, right? And then why should it be somewhere in the middle of the desert, right? So that's another thing that is also interesting, right? Why is it there in the desert, in the peninsula, at the Arab peninsula, right? Why? One angle you can see it is that this is to distance from any accusation that this is influenced by the philosophical world of the Roman or the Persian or whatever that is, you know, the thinker at that time, right? So it comes in the desert, meaning from the perspective of the human being, it comes from the desert that, you know, what is there? How come something like this come from there? Right? So it goes back to what is the only logical conclusion that you get from it. It must be from the divine then, right? So it reinforces the conclusion, right? It is basically that also answer why on earth, right? What is the wisdom? That is one of the wisdom, right? To show that this is truly revelation, where there's no other, is in the absence of other alternative explanation, right? And through an angel for about 20 years. Why should it be throughout 20 years to complete this book? Why cannot it be like, bam, this is your book, complete? Now, the Quran is, you know, let's take it from its claim. The claim is, it is guidance for mankind, and this will be the last revelation, and this will be the last prophet. So whatever guidance here should be able to cover any needs for the entirety of the human race until the end of time, basically, right? And it should encompass every single aspect. And if we want to break down for simplicity, right, how to live as a person and in our relationship with God, that's one thing, right? Personally with God, how should I live? One. Two, how should I live with other human beings, as a society, as a community? What is the do and don'ts? What is the guideline? What is the principles, etc. as a society? That's number two. Number three, should we actually have a government? And if we should have a government to govern a state, nation, etc., what is the do and don't guideline, principles, etc.? So that's number three. And number four, even if we have an established nation or state or country or whatever we want to call it, how to deal with an external country or nation or empire, right? What if they are against, you know, the state that want to adhere with the teaching of God, principle from God, from revelation? So is there any guidance, principles, etc., how to engage? That's number four, right? So to make it simple, we have four different scope. One is personally with God, how should I live my life in my relationship with God? How should I live my life in relationship with the society? How to live my life in how to structure and govern a state, a country, a nation, and how to deal with external factor, especially when it is hostile towards the state of the believer, right? So four levels. The how to say, the Quran is coming down and explaining things that make sense, in the sense that it address with what is happening at the time, right? So for the book to completely cover all the four domains, it should how to say, being revealed throughout a period of time that covers the four aspect, right? So in the state of Medina, we start with the Makkah early periods, right? We have the human being, and meaning us as a human, how is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the God Almighty. That started there, and of course throughout the 22 years. But then the aspect of course there in, and also how to deal with those who persecute you, etc., there's that element as well. But the aspect of how to become a society, right, that started off in Medina, really, right? So we become a society that can have our own how to say, determination of how our own culture, society, etc. Then the verses that addresses that aspect, and that phase in the Medina as well is when you are establishing a state. So okay, now we are establishing the state, so there are verses that address the principles, etc., and as well as dealing with external in early on, how to deal with the Makkah, the pagan Makkah, and then later on with world powers of Persian, Roman, etc. Right. So it does require 23 years, and actually in his human history 23 years is also already a miraculous, meaning how can it go from zero to that level in 23 years, right? And of course it extended afterwards with the Khalifates, right? The four Khulafa al-Rashidin, right? The guided Khalifa, the four, right? So in that short time span, it goes from zero to that level. And in terms of the 23 years, the verses, the revelation comes in to guide the Muslim, the believers, in how to deal with every single instances and the principles, the technicalities, the operation aspect, etc. Right? So that would explain why it required 20 years, right, to cover all the scope and domains, and revealed, meaning the verse is not revealed in a vacuum or just without a practicality surrounding it. It is keep on being revealed in various instances, various episodes of things that happening, right? So it require when the state is established, it require when the conflict is happening between the state and other states, etc., right? It requires a society, living society, and hence we have various instances of episodes that require answer, right? There's zihar, there's marriage and divorce, there's inheritance, etc., right? So hopefully it does really make sense, and it make perfect sense that the revelation, the final revelation, is sent at that time to an Arab who could not read or write, and it make perfect sense as well that it is revealed. The place is, the setting is in the middle of the desert there in the Arab Peninsula, and it does make perfect sense as well that it's being revealed throughout the span of 23 years. So interesting question, and I would not have thought of, you know, saying this other than when this exact question is being thrown at me. So yeah, it's good that you asked this question, that I have the opportunity to, you know, express my mind, even though the flow of my how to say explaining might not be the best, but I have never thought of explaining it before, because within Muslim we discuss these things, but we never thought of we should explain this to the others, right? What is the wisdom behind God doing this in this manner, right? So yeah, hope that answered the question of is it making sense. And interestingly, the perspective of this narrative is the stupidest story ever told. From what I've covered, from, you know, it is like we cannot even think of making that plot to make it so conclusive that this must be from God, other than what actually had happened and God chosen it to be as such, right? So it's not stupidest story, is one of the greatest story ever happened on this planet Earth. Yep, feel free to comment anything that I missed. Interested to know what else, other question that you want to ask. Feel free to do so. Thank you for watching. See you next time.